Welcome to SOC Radio and Spirit Weavers. Join us as Jody Whitewolf Morrison shares with us her knowledge, abilities, teaching us how it's done, right here on SOC Radio. Brought to you by spiritualistonline.com.
Welcome everybody to Spirit Weavers. And this is at SOC Radio with your host, Jody Whitewolf. Whether it's your morning, your afternoon, or your evening, we're sure glad that you have joined in on SOC Radio, on TuneIn, or however it is that you've gotten here. My guest today is a dear friend, and her name is Kimberly DOLIM, and many of you may know her as EVERGREEN. So, welcome, and as I said, my guest is Kim DOLIM. Kim, or EVERGREEN, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Jody. I have definitely been looking forward to this.
Me too. A huge amount. It's taken us a bit, but we're both here now, and I guess, as you said earlier, that's what matters, being here now. So, Kim, let me ask you this to start us off. Have you always known that you could hear things or see things or feel things that other people could not?
I think I noticed that I could feel things more than other people, and sometimes I could feel things, especially when I was little, and articulate them and make adults uncomfortable because that might have been something they've been trying to conceal. And it was after that I started to notice more of the hearing things, and that's been much more persistent and much more a day-to-day thing than anything else so far.
How did you, I imagine that must have been a bit upsetting both to you and to the adults around you when you knew stuff that you weren't supposed to know.
Yeah, it made them a little bit uncomfortable. I think it was just more noticing, sort of behavioral tells and emotional states more than I was supposed to. I didn't really get any sort of psychic pickups and make any sort of like pronouncements that made people uncomfortable.
Uh-huh. How did you deal with that? What did you do?
I learned to talk less about what I could actually pick up.
Was that uncomfortable for you?
I think it was easier for me to just let it be okay to feel those things, but know that in lots of situations, it wasn't necessarily okay to talk about all of it.
Uh-huh. When did you start to get a glimmer of what it was that might be going on with you?
It wasn't until fairly late. I mean, I had all these experiences and I just got kind of used to picking up more emotion, not being able to tell really what was mine or not mine. It wasn't until, maybe around 2000 that I started to do more with the spirituality type of things. I joined a meditation circle. That was my very first thing that I did.
And was that helpful to you?
It was very helpful. It was really nice to be able to have a place. I had little kids then, to have something that I could go to that was a set environment, that had a specific sort of focus with like-minded and like-inclined people. That was really my kind of sanity place.
Yeah. And you learned more about meditation. How did that help?
It gave me some extra tools to be able to cope with situations, having a full-time job, having small children, having a husband who is a grad student. It gave me better ability to manage, things that I was picking up around me and just kind of get through my day.
That makes sense. And then what happened after you were at this meditation group? Was that online, the meditation group?
Oh, no, it was in person.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
lovely.
It was great. And then my first real spiritual development class was a one-on-one channeling class with a local medium who was part of the group occasionally.
Uh-huh.
Because
go ahead.
There were two specific entities that were working with the group that were being channeled by the group leader. And so I had actually gotten a chance to do the one-on-one sessions and start with channeling, which kind of is ironic to me because it's coming back now more than it had been before.
Oh, nice. What goes around comes around, only in a positive way.
Let's hope so.
So when you were in this channeling group, did you have the experience of actually being the medium, the go-between between the entity and the group?
I did that for the group once. It wasn't like a really official sort of UK style circle. It was just a meditation circle that met weekly. Sometimes there was channeling offered, sometimes there was not. I think part of my progression towards the end of the class was to do some channeling for the group. My biggest complication with that was that, I did the channeling, I felt okay with it, and then the feedback that I got afterwards was really difficult.
In what sense?
The leader of the group told me I'd misidentified the spirit I was talking to.
Oh, that must have been uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was. And, I didn't really know what to do with that. My first inclination, of course, since I was little, was to kind of shut down and step back and not take those sort of risks anymore. And it took me a while to get over that. And that's come up, within the last few years when I was doing some channeling in another chat room that, someone had gotten back to me and said that I misidentified the spirit I was communicating with. And it was easier to take that the second time around, but it was still kind of off-putting. It made me doubt myself.
Sure. I definitely understand that. That's an awkward kind of thing. So you said that you had been part of this other chat room. What drew you to joining any chat room at that point?
Well, the good experiences outweigh the bad. I mean, I moved back to California in 2000, and I had been getting readings from a psychic medium in this area. I'm still in California, and she had offered a group spiritual development class. And so when I came to this area, I got into the group spiritual development class, and that was a lot of fun, and it was useful, and I learned even more, which of course is what we hope for. And so after I had gone through that experience, the internet development caught up with my spiritual development, and then there were online chats to frequent. And so that made another opportunity for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did you find that when you had semi-shut down, that that followed you? In other words, it made it more difficult for you to be willing to be open to communicating with spirit?
Oh, definitely.
Cool.
I mean, combined with my training as a scientist and my propensity to doubt myself in the first place, it's a wicked combination.
What did you do about that? I mean, that would have been a huge stopper.
It was for a while, and I had a really good friend who's a woman who's on the East Coast who finally said to me, get yourself a tool. Find something. It doesn't matter what it is, cards, runes, tarot, whatever type of thing you resonate with. Find yourself something that you will be able to get over the doubting phase.
And what did you develop? What did you find that was helpful?
It was funny to me because I have a really good spiritualist bookstore and tchotchke shop that I really love. And I stood in front of a display of about 50 tarot decks, and I did not feel anything from any of them. And it wasn't until I walked across to the other part of the store and stood in front of some oracle cards that I really noticed I was having a reaction to one particular deck. And that was my gemstone oracle deck. That was the very first deck I ever got.
What comes to me to ask about is so many people have experiences similar to yours where they shut down, and some people don't ever come back. And yet what it sounds like is that there was something in you that just wouldn't lie down and say, I quit. Can you talk about that a little bit? What gave you the courage to keep coming back and keep coming back?
I think the opportunity to interact with spirit, both ascended masters, guides, loved ones, just the whole pantheon, that was so appealing to me that no matter what else I had going on, raising kids, having jobs, all that kind of stuff, when I got to a point where I had some time for me, this is the kind of thing that I always reach for.
So how would you define that hunger to be drawn to a spiritual thing? I'm not sure exactly how to phrase this, but what I'm after is there's a connection somewhere in you between you and being a spiritual person. Can you talk about that?
I think it was when I started to get closer to believing I am a spiritual being having a human experience idea, because I had been on the flip side of the teeter-totter. I was convinced that I was a human striving to have a spiritual experience.
And what shifted that? Yeah.
I just think it was consistent interaction with other people in the spiritualist community from all levels of experience and all levels of specialty, and that actually made me more comfortable with being me. And then it also gave me an opportunity to see what was possible.
Wow. I'm so drawn to the notion of it's a courage thing. So many people would have said, it's just not worth the struggle. It's not worth the fear. It's not worth the potential for rejection. And yet you didn't have that reaction. You kept coming back, and your interest and your awareness kept growing. And that speaks to me of courage. Did you feel Did you feel courageous? Did you feel driven?
I think I felt some sort of persistent nagging from the other side. Some level of connection was getting through pretty much always. And they were waiting for me to actually reach for the rest of it. So, I'm not necessarily all that courageous when I look at it, because it's not like I'm actually out there in the public eye, with my own website and offering, services and readings and all that kind of stuff. I'm still pretty much, having all of my spiritual experiences in my private life, private even from my family.
So your family isn't aware very much of what it is you're growing into?
No, they're not. My daughter is very, very perceptive and, stretched me a lot in terms of my spiritual development when she was very small, because she was seeing orbs and colored orbs with smiley faces, floating around in circles in the living room, so to adequately support her, I was stretched.
In what ways?
Well, when your 5-year-old goes to the ophthalmologist and tries to explain to him that she sees colors where they don't belong, that's one of those moments where you need to be creative in distracting her from trying to get her point across to this doctor who knows nothing about what she's talking about, and also reaffirm to her that it's not that they don't belong there, it's that other people don't see them there, and it's okay to see them there.
How did she react to that?
To the doctor not understanding her?
Well, to the whole notion that you were giving her, that it was okay that those things be there, but other people couldn't see them, and that was okay too.
I think she just kind of took that at face value.
So
that she thought that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, she was okay with that. You know, she's always been her own person from a very, very, very young age. And so, you know, if I could give her an adequate explanation, then she would find that an okay thing. She has talked, I mean, she's 14 now. She has talked about an interest in getting into tarot and things like that. She hasn't done all that much with spiritual development, but she really doesn't talk about the things that she used to talk about 10 years ago. That's kind of gone away.
Do you think she's repressed it, or do you think she's being a teenager?
Probably both.
Yeah. And of course, the cool thing is that I'm sure she knows that she can talk with you about these things, even though other people probably wouldn't have a clue and would sort of think she's a bit off.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good possibility. I mean, my younger son knows that I do something, but he just calls it that BS I do with the cards.
Uh-huh. Oh my goodness. Now, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, I'm good.
There. Okay. Let me ask you about, there's an intermediary time between when you were feeling that urge to be more expressive of yourself as a spiritual person and your current life. How did you move from there to where you are now?
I think a lot of it had to do with progressing through the different stages of my online interactions. I mean, my first site that I was really active on was James Van Prague's site.
Uh-huh.
And that got me to a different level of interaction with different people who had different spiritual abilities and lived them to different levels, in their daily lives. And that taught me a lot about managing my empathy, being on that site, and then evolving to the other different sites that I've been on. And I think SOC was my big leap in that there were several different times when I joined SOC and it wasn't a good fit at that time, and then I would go do something else, and then I would know enough people in common where I was that was not SOC, who were part of SOC, who would bring me back over to the SOC side of things. And it took a few tries before it was a good energy fit for me, and now I'm happy.
That's cool. When you say it wasn't a good energy fit, I'm curious about that. What was it?
I think a lot of it was my perception.
Uh-huh.
In that, this is where the big boys play. This is where the psychic mediums are. This is where the seriously talented people are. Gosh, I'll go be the mascot, but I really don't think I can, play up to their level.
So again, it was a question of doubt, self-doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's changed.
Yes, it has.
Because not only are you at SOC, but you offer all sorts of readings, and you have a monthly chat session where you offer readings, and you offer readings during other sessions. So something major has shifted, obviously.
It did, and it cracks me up to look at myself several years ago where I still couldn't imagine that I was actually connecting to spirit really on purpose and it was working, to where I am now, where there's so much more that I do right now that I don't stop to think about. I just do it.
I was just going to ask you, part of what I'm loving about this is there are so many people who feel what you have felt, that knowing that they are a spiritual person, they're a spiritual being having a physical experience, as you said, and yet it is so hard for them to make that transition from knowing that to acting that in some way in the world. And what I'm loving is the encouragement that your experience offers to other people's. And that makes me wonder, what advice would you give to others who are out there who are saying, I think things, I feel things, I see things, I know things that other people don't, and yet I'm not quite willing yet to take that next step into being that, acting that in the world. What advice do you have?
It's funny that you're asking me for advice, because I feel like I'm still on, not even on the top of the fence. I'm still behind the fence in terms of doing this on an open daily basis. So my only advice to people right now from where I am is, you are who you are. You aren't just who your family thinks you're supposed to be, your coworkers think you're supposed to be, society thinks you're supposed to be. You are who you are, and you actually get to enjoy that. And if you're having situations where you aren't enjoying that, it would be really useful to find other like-minded people who can give you the support you need to get past the discomfort, past the questions of, the classic empath situations. Is this energy mine? Is this energy not mine? As soon as you can find other people who can actually give you advice and tools and support, and who can call you on your garbage when you really need it, and who are shoulders you can cry on. Gee, this sounds like Jody. This is the best thing you can do for yourself. Decide that you are okay. What you do is okay. Whether or not you tell other people is your business. You don't have to. You can if you want to. Use your discernment. All those kinds of great things. If you can find support for those types of issues, it will be fabulous for you.
That is really good advice. I'm really glad to hear you say that. There's a question. There's a question in the chat room for you. And the question is, was there a deciding point where you discovered that you were purposefully connecting to spirit? We were choosing that.
I think I kind of had to back into it without looking. And then when I was there, realized I was there.
Uh-huh.
There wasn't a moment where I stepped right up and proudly struck my Wonder Woman pose and said, I'm here and I'm connecting to spirit. No, that wasn't me.
When was the first time you remember intentionally saying, okay, I know you're out there. I can sense you, feel you, hear you, whatever. And there's someone sitting here who is waiting for me to be the intermediary and to communicate for you to them. What was your first experience of that?
The first experience I had of that was when I had originally started my Members Moments, and I was working with my Oracle card deck with the gemstones, and I was really just sticking to what was on the card. I wasn't expanding all that much. I was getting impressions that I was sharing, but it wasn't really like I was doing any sort of specialized spirit communication. And I was doing a reading for Kentucky
Someone.
Girl. Yes.
Okay.
And so I was shuffling my cards, and all of a sudden this woman shouted at me, "No cards. I want to talk to her."
Wow. What did you think of that?
I was blown away.
Uh-huh.
I hadn't had that happen before.
Did you know what was going on?
I told my sitter what I had heard, and she said, "Oh yeah, that's my mom."
And how did you feel about that?
I was shocked. Part of me was laughing at myself because I've consistently gotten so much, said in my head. I consistently get so many songs in my head that I've actually named the radio station in my head. It's WKKR for Kim's Cranium Radio. So to have somebody talk to me wasn't that much of a surprise, but it was a total shock because I had been working in my little comfort zone, and this lady showed up and just blew me away.
And what did you do? Did you then allow her to talk and you transferred that to your sitter?
Absolutely. She's going to shout at me. I'm not going to try and actually get away with not saying what she wanted to have conveyed.
And what was that like? Was that accurate for the sitter?
Oh, yeah. It was easy to do because she was giving me so much validation of everything that I said that it was really easy to do, that she identified the person that I was talking to, within the first 10 seconds. That made it astoundingly easy.
Okay, so what did that do for your trust in your ability?
It gave me a little bit of trust. It gave me a lot of worry that now something had changed and this is going to go on. And I needed to adapt. But it made that first experience, it gave me the impression that this could be easy.
So on the one hand, there was some upping of the kind of performance anxiety. And on the other hand, there was a kind of a relaxing into it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Because that combination can be it can be paralyzing in a certain way.
Oh, there are moments when I'm still paralyzed.
How do you mean?
That second where there is something, but you're still going to have that moment of doubt.
Okay.
we were doing readings off of objects for certain people, where we were just picking up an object in the room with us and for a specific person giving them a reading. And I remember picking up this object, and it was a little glass container with a whole bunch of itty bitty seashells and sand and stuff in it. And I didn't trust myself to just go ahead and say, "You love the sea." And so I did this description. I wasn't supposed to say exactly what I was holding, but I was talking about the ocean and this and that and the other thing. And the sitter could take it all. And then finally, when she was giving me feedback afterwards, one of the first things she typed was, "I love the sea."
Oh, wow.
And I thought, I am such a chicken. Spirit had me pick up this object and look at what was in it, and I could have just sucked it up and said, "You love the sea." And I didn't. Which was all part of my learning. And it's not like the reading actually went badly, but I could have really gone for it in terms of trusting spirit and just said that one sentence.
Fascinating. I'd like to interrupt us here for a minute because we are on the half-hour mark, so it's time for a short break. When we come back, I want to talk more about this whole issue around trust. So as we get ready to go for break, I want to thank all of you who are listening on SOC Radio and your various other ways of connecting with us. And thank the people in the chat room for coming on in and joining us. And we will be back in just a few moments.
We are taking a break for messages from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. Jody Whitewolf Morrison will be right back with more from Spirit Weavers. Spirit Talk with Julie. Spirit's medium, Julie Simpson, and guests delve into the world of spirit, the faith and the way of life, renewing the movement that brought two worlds together and ancient spiritual beliefs to the forefront of society, proving once and for all there is nothing to fear in talking to spirit. Live in the SOC Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com, or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for SOC Radio. Join us on SOC Radio. Host your own online radio show. We welcome inquiries and ideas for your own show live right here on SOC Radio. Share your knowledge, thoughts and abilities. Bring your ideas to life with us here on SOC Radio and spiritualistonline.com. Or join any of our shows as a special guest, speaker or presenter. Check out the liveliest spiritual chat show, the Spiritualist Open Circle Panel Forum, a monthly discussion show, or the Circle of Mediums, a weekly show sharing spirit messages and teaching all aspects of mediumship and psychic abilities. Or join our Christina on the monthly astrology show. Contact us now at socradioshows@gmail.com. SOC Radio aims to provide a wide range of hosts, shows, views and opinions while endeavouring to maintain our three vital principles of openness, honesty and integrity, covering all aspects of spiritualism, mediumship, healing, personal and spiritual development for all faiths, religions and walks of life as a way of life. As part of our spiritualistonline.com, Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum, SOC Radio brings you the latest and honest news, views and names in the spiritual field. Check us out and tune in to SOC Radio on spiritualistonline.com. Join in the SOC Radio chat room on the website. Beyond the Veil with Terry Oz. Check it out first Monday, monthly, 2 p.m. UK time. Terry shares her experiences and love of spiritual communication with those from beyond the veil. Join us live in the SOC Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com, or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for SOC Radio. Advertise with SOC Radio. 10, 15, 20 or 30-second jingles, adverts or promotions, all going out live on SOC Radio. Promote your services, churches, groups or events at the best rates online. Work with us on shows or promotion and you could get your jingles absolutely free. For this and more, contact Julie at socradioshows@gmail.com. Spirit Weavers with Jody Whitewolf Morrison, a weekly 1-hour radio show, Thursdays 8 p.m. UK time, featuring those who are dedicated to living their spirituality and exploring how that is woven into their everyday lives through their work, practices and beliefs. Various SOC members from Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum sharing their abilities, knowledge and more. Dates and times will vary. Live in the SOC Radio chat room on spiritualistonline.com, or simply listen in at tunein.com and search for SOC Radio. SOC Radio welcomes you back to Spirit Weavers with Jody Whitewolf Morrison.
Welcome back, everybody, to SOC Radio. This is Spirit Weavers with Jody Morrison, and my special guest today, who is an inspiration, actually, is Kim DOLIM, who is known to many of you as Evergreen. And Kim has been sharing with us the process of her development from knowing that there was something out there that she was connected to being willing to take the inner risks to develop, to be able to be that in-between person, the medium by which spirit and physical people can communicate. And Kim, just before we closed for the break, we were talking about trust and doubt. And for me, those things are really connected. And I find that for me, when I have doubt, it's because I don't trust. Is that true for you?
Oh, definitely.
What do you do with that?
I've gotten better at responding versus reacting. I think that's helped a lot. I mean, the doubt is going to jump up, like a jack-in-the-box out of a can, but you can choose how you deal with it. It doesn't have to stop you. You can have it, you can look at it, you can say, okay, I see you. I'm going to do something else. Thank you for showing up. But now, it's my turn to do what I choose.
Okay. When we talk about trust, what is it that, from your perspective, what is it that we do need to trust?
You need to be able to trust yourself. I think to say, yes, I am doing this sort of interaction and this is something I like, something I enjoy, something that's in service to others. And I think you need to develop a relationship with your guides. I'm not the most stellar person in terms of actively cultivating relationships with my guides. I'm kind of at the beginning stage with that, but the more I do that, the more I find that I do trust, that I do rely on them in many ways. Some of them more humorous than others. It's not all just serious. I think you understand that with Amphira.
Yes.
But the tricky part is when you're going into an unknown situation, when you're doing a reading the readings for familiar sitters are harder than those for unfamiliar sitters. And I think having the trust in the unfamiliar sitter situation is a little more challenging for me, especially if you have an inexperienced sitter. Being able to practice, in the SOC environment is extremely helpful in that part of it is that you have very experienced sitters. And so when I get into a situation where I am reading for someone I don't know, that's my biggest challenge for trust.
Yes. So you're saying that the trust is your growing connection to your guides and therefore your trust in spirit that they're going to be there? Have you had a situation where you wanted to connect for someone and felt like no spirit was there?
I think I've had that in terms of trying to make a connection with my cards as a tool and not having actually any type of signal from the cards themselves that there was a connection there, and then having to switch to a more mediumship type of focus. And it hasn't failed in the mediumship type of thing. And I've had to get used to the situations where I'm getting nothing from the cards. And I just have to say to my sitter, okay, I'm getting nothing from the cards. Let me see what else I might have for you.
And that works for you?
Yes, it does.
That's wonderful. So there's trusting in spirit, but then you were also saying there's trusting in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that about? Can you say more about that?
It's trusting yourself to say, I'm not getting anything. It's trusting yourself to say, I don't know what I'm getting, but this is what I see. It's trusting that you don't have to understand the message. The message is for the sitter, and so you can cut yourself a break. If you get a sitter and the thing you get for them first is Twinkies, it doesn't necessarily make any sense for you, but that might start a whole ball rolling in terms of them being able to identify the person on the other side who's trying to send the message.
Whoa, sorry. You've mentioned, I did my famous mute and then forget to unmute thing. You've mentioned this word several times, and the word is empathy. How do you define empathy?
Empathy is the ability to perceive feelings, thoughts, and attitudes that are going on in other people.
Is that something you perceive, or is that something you experience? How does that work for you?
Yeah, it's kind of tricky to language it because you feel it more than you think it, but then I always end up having to process what I've felt and make that crucial determination of mine, not mine.
Uh-huh, gotcha. And when you can determine that it's not yours, what do you do then?
Then I have to actually focus more on my boundaries. I'm picking up too much. If I'm getting too much information, if I am being emotionally tossed around, then that's a good moment for me to consider whether or not I have my boundaries set correctly for my highest good.
Gotcha. Okay, and in what ways, if at all, do you find that your empathy can get in the way of being a communicator for spirit to your sitter and back?
I have some pretty strong reactions. There are certain guide energies and higher energies that cause me to cry when I interact with them, and that's unsettling to me. Uh-huh. And it's something that's just part of my learning, that I have to allow myself to have a reaction, to actually ask for spirit to step back a little bit so that I'm not having quite such a strong reaction. And then just learn to work with higher levels of energy and manage, the physical responses that I have to that.
Yes. And does spirit oblige you by stepping back?
Oh, always.
Yeah. So for me, that would increase my trust level. That would help me. Yeah. Because you're not sort of a cork on the water. You're the steerer of your own boat, I guess you could put it. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, it's a collaborative thing. And I'm learning that more and more, in that I work with spirit, and I know lots of other SOC members who like to emphasize that, and I think it's a very important thing. You work with them. Sometimes, in many cases, you do things for them. You give messages. That's working for them, in that they can't convey those themselves. But it's not a one-way street. It's not a yes sir, no sir. Someone wants to speak, I stop everything and make sure that happens type of relationship. Okay,
and that brings me back to wanting to talk a little bit more about connecting with, you were talking about your guides, connecting with your guides. And the fact that the more you do that, something good comes from that for you?
It does. I mean, because I don't usually think about how many guides I might have and all the different situations that I might actually have access to help, to comfort, to information over a variety of topics. that would be something I could ask a guide about.
Okay, so you say you do sometimes meditate. What does that mean for you?
It just means that I consciously stop all of my external interactions with electronics and people, and I find myself a quiet spot and I just unplug. I do some breathing that calms my body. I just kind of sit in a quieter energy that makes me receptive to messages, to conversations with my guides, but also gives me a space to start conversations.
Oh, so sometimes it's not just that the guides are there for you. Sometimes you're able to initiate those conversations.
Mm-hmm. I think I learned more about that when we did the co-creative writing.
In what way?
It didn't occur to me to ask for help and input from a writing guide. For some reason, that just did not occur to me. And it's had amazing benefits because now I have a writing guide and I interact with her and I collaborate with her in different areas. And I kind of frustrated her when I was asking her for help with technical writing during my last job because she really didn't like it.
Oh, my. Do you find that that's had any influence at all on your relationship with other guides? The fact that you now know you can call on your writing guide and say, hello, I need you. Has that influenced your connection with other guides?
I haven't really explored that too much yet. I mean, there's a lot out there that I haven't looked for. My newest interaction with a possible future guide happened very recently, just in the last few days, really. And that's something that I also need to explore. I didn't actually stop to consider that one of my relatives who is currently on the other side might actually become one of my guides and in a specific capacity.
Is that something that's challenging, or how do you feel about that?
It's wonderful. I mean, it's amazing. It's something that if you're thinking, I mean, and this gets complicated where you're thinking from your heart and thinking from your head, is a concept that, I'm still getting used to. I'm practicing it a little bit. I'm getting more comfortable with it. And so when I look at it from a heart-centered space, it makes perfect sense. And I don't know why I hadn't considered that earlier. But it's just one of those things that it's a new thing. It's part of my learning, and I'm going to enjoy it because, of course, I have missed this person on the earth plane desperately. And to think that he is available to me 24/7 is miraculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And your other guides, do you initiate connection to other guides? Is that something you're comfortable doing?
I am, and it was a huge learning process in and of itself when somebody first said to me during a reading I was getting, I see Jesus around you a lot.
Oh.
Because my first inclination was, well, I use his name in negative ways so often, it's no wonder that, I'm attracting attention somehow. And then to get to a further point where somebody said to me, Jesus is your main guide. And to go through the process of realizing that and accepting that. And of course, there was a very, very wonderful SOC member who had Jesus as her main guide, who loved to refer to him as Mr. Big.
Right.
Who was a huge mentor for me, just getting used to the idea that someone who has such a spectacular reputation on the earth plane would be my main guide. That kind of knocked me for a loop, and it got me back into the, wow, I'm just a human striving for a spiritual experience, and I'm completely overwhelmed that an entity of this repute would actually be there for me. That took a while to get used to.
And now, are you used to that, would you say?
I am, and I'm not. It's really easy to get into the reverence part of things, and he tends to make a huge effort to get me out of that. And I think when he's a little irked that I haven't interacted with him quite as much as he would like, he usually gives me a visual of Ward Cleaver. Now, I don't know how many people out there have watched Leave It to Beaver, but part of it, the dad was Ward Cleaver, and he had a tendency to sit in his armchair with his newspaper up with his pipe, and some calamity would happen within the family, and they would interrupt him from his paper, and he'd have to put down his paper and look. And when I talk to Mr. Big about something, sometimes when he wants to show me that, oh, you are paying attention, he will give me the Ward Cleaver in the armchair with the newspaper visual and just kind of peek out from behind it. And oh, yes, you noticed me.
Just a little tiny bit of spirit sarcasm, eh?
Oh, yeah, priceless, absolutely.
So humor is important to you and to your connection with your guides?
The ability to use humor, the ability to expect humor, the ability to trust, you know, that this is a real fluid, evolving connection that can be whatever I can choose to make it.
Wonderful. So you're seeing that from what you're saying, I'm gathering that you're seeing that this is a responsibility that you have rather than sitting back and just saying, okay, I'm here if you want me. You're seeing more that you have to take the active role.
Yeah, you do have to take the active role. And sometimes that is just kind of a sitting and saying, I'm here, I'm listening, I would like to talk to you about fill in the blank. And making that space and letting that happen. They're not going to show up with stone tablets and tell you all kinds of important things. That's not going to happen, and thank goodness, because that would freak me out. But to have interactions that I never had considered possible is just so precious to me. And I am doing more and more to try, the T word, to foster those, to expand those, to enjoy them and to count on them and to laugh with them.
Yeah. Something you are famous for, Evergreen, is, and you made reference to this before with the radio station in your head.
Yes.
You get songs. That's a major way that you connect. And I'm curious, would you tell us a little more about that, how that happens for you?
It's spontaneous. Sometimes it's relentless. It's just kind of always been there. And it's gotten more pervasive in the last couple of years. And I haven't had the habit of actually stopping to figure out who's sending this message, for what purpose. I'm just learning to go back and delve into what this is all about. I had initially, I had written off a lot of the songs that I had gotten as messages, as important, as something that I needed to pay attention to, until I started getting songs that I don't like.
Oh, interesting.
And then that was a moment where I really wanted to know why I was getting this and what did it mean.
And are the songs for you, or are they songs for somebody you're reading for? How does that work?
It works both ways. I mean, I get more songs to me when I'm in a private situation, when I'm driving in a car, when I'm sitting somewhere by myself, when I'm alone in my house. I get songs that I believe are for me. But in reading situations, in chat sessions and things like that, then there are lots of times that there's an indication to me that this is either something for the room or is to be shared with someone specific.
Okay. And how do you tell the difference between what's for you and what's for someone else? When you're in a chat setting, somebody says X and the song pops into your head. How do you know when that's a reminder to you of something or whether that's part of a message for your sitter?
I think it's usually just the context of when it happens.
Okay.
And I mean, there will be something more to it than just the song popping into my head. I'll see some other indication. The name of the person on the chat list is flashing or is larger, or something that gives me an indicator, some key to communication that tells me that this actually belongs to someone else and is important to convey.
That's amazing. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, believe it or not, Kim, although there's obviously far more to talk about, we are down to our last 2 minutes. And so I want to first thank everybody who's been listening. And I want to thank the people who are in the chat room. And I want you to have a chance to let people know how they can reach you. Because I'm sure you have given courage and inspiration to many who are at the beginnings, so to speak, of their journey with spirit. So how can they reach you?
Well, I hope I've been able to do that. I really do. And thank you for all your kind words, Jody. Basically, I can be reached on Facebook as Kimberly DOLIM. My email address is evergreen1827@yahoo.com. And you can frequently find me on the last Monday of every month in the Open Circle on SOC.
Definitely. And I want to thank you, Kim. I know that we're all beginners in many ways. And we are all learning constantly about ourselves, about our connection to spirit and how we do that, and about being the medium, being the intermediary, being the conduit of messages from the other side to people who are still in the physical. And we have a tendency sometimes to compare ourselves to other people and feel like, well, I don't quite measure up to that person. They're much better at this than me. And yet every single person has areas of expertise. I don't ever get songs the way you do. And I admire that. Something we haven't had a time to touch on have been repeated numbers. I am far more aware of that now because of you in particular. So we all have these areas where we are very practiced indeed. And we all have our areas where we say, gee, I wish I could do that better. Psychometry for me is, for some reason, far more difficult. And yet, as I listen to you today, I am deeply appreciative of your willingness to share your journey and your process, because in many ways, we are all right there with you. So thank you so much, Kim, for being with us today. And for those of you who are listening in, we will see you next week, same time, same place. And in the meantime, hugs and blessings to each of you. Thanks again.
You have been listening to Jody Whitewolf Morrison, Spirit Weavers on SOC Radio. Brought to you by Spiritualists Online Network and Lyceum at spiritualistonline.com. Thanks for listening.